Welcome to this edition of Tuesday Talks with Twyla. Today we're going to talk about goal setting. Even though it's not the beginning of the year, which is typically when goals are set, we are just past the halfway mark. So if you're someone that does set goals, it's a good time to check in. It's also a good time to challenge yourself between now and the end of the year. So my first question to you is, are you someone that sets goals? And if you are not, I challenge you to ask yourself why. This is very interesting. When I just presented a goal setting like short presentation to a group of my Life Vantage cohorts, and I noticed as I was preparing that I have some resistance to setting goals. And so I got curious about it, which is what I always recommend that we do when anything creates resistance or something comes up that we like shy away from or we don't want to engage in. I challenge you to get curious. So it was interesting that what came up for me was, you know, establishing a goal or setting a goal is setting the intention, right? Because what's behind it? Our actions, right? We can create the goal, but it doesn't just fall in our lap. We have to do the work to achieve the goal. And once we set the intention and we establish the goal, we've kind of, right, created some actions required. And so for me, that was the resistance. I was finding myself like, well, if I set the goal, the thought I had was if I set the goal, then I have to do the things. Yes, but if I don't set the goal, then I don't do the things, and then I don't get what I want, right? And so it's interesting if you have resistance to setting goals, get curious about what that is, why that is, right? And if you did set a goal at the beginning of the year and you're assessing where you're at midway through the year, what comes up for you? What are the thoughts that and feelings that you have as you look at your goal and your current status against that goal? If you're, on track, you're excited, you're motivated to continue the momentum. If you haven't taken the action, right? It reveals all of that for us. So, whether you have a goal for 2025 or you do not, I'm going to challenge you to create one. And even if you have a goal for 25 and you're not halfway through, I challenge you, or maybe you haven't even, gotten a tenth of the way. I'm going to challenge you to keep that goal with the December 31st deadline. Why is that? What happens when we set a goal, especially if it's a big goal, and I'm going to challenge you to set a big goal, an impossible goal, a crazy goal. First of all, you have to tap into what you want to achieve, what you want for yourself. No limiting beliefs. If no one's looking, if no one would be mad at you, if no one would tell you that it's impossible, what would you want to set as a goal? Whatever it is completely up to you. And when you set a huge goal, you expand your mind. So, my coach had said that once you set the goal, you've changed yourself in that instant. And there was two things that came up for me when she said that. For one, I was like, yeah, not so much. Well, the reason I didn't connect with that is because I wasn't very intentional. Like I wasn't actually setting the goal, right? I was just letting it float around in my head. Like maybe I could accomplish this or maybe I could do that, right? So there's a difference between just having some goals in our head or some thoughts about goals and actually being intentional about setting the goal firmly, intentionally, setting it out into the world, saying out loud, writing it down, right? That was the resistance I had. I had goals in my head. I have goals, have intentions, things like that in my head all the time, but to get intentional about it and write it down. When you do that, she's saying that you change in the instant. So the first thing I noticed was I didn't connect with that because I wasn't actually setting it that way. I wasn't being intentional about it. I wasn't writing it down. I wasn't actually setting the goal. I was just letting it float. But the other thing that came up about changing me is you can pick a goal and write it down because I have done that. Like I don't know that I have like recently, right? Like the goal I had set, I think was like last year sometime. And at the beginning of the year, I didn't set a new goal. And I've just kind of had this goal, right? Like this giant goal that I've moved the needle very little on. What I noticed and what I've kind of teased out of like her teachings and some other like goal setting um and just like achieving big things in our life, like some books and stuff that I've been listening to. The other difference, right? I said there was two things that I didn't connect with how setting the goal actually changes us in that moment. The first thing was being intentional, actually setting a specific goal. The second one is believing it's possible. And she's talked about this a lot. So I was surprised that I didn't catch that for myself. And this is the work, right? This is the work of having a coach, having someone kind of catch your crap, hold your feet to the fire, help you get curious about things that maybe you just kind of like skirt around. And when we coach ourselves, this is what happens. I didn't catch this for myself. I wasn't believing it was possible. So you can say something and, I'm going to be promoted to the president of the company, right? You can just say things like that. You can just, set goals or have these goals float around your head and not be super intentional about it. And even if you are and you write it down, it doesn't matter if you don't believe it's possible, right? It's not going to change you by just writing down, I'm going to become the president of the company by the end of 2025, unless you believe it's possible, right? And here's the thing. When you believe it's possible, your energy changes. The thoughts you have, the way you feel, and your energy around it changes. That is the change that happens in the moment when you set the goal, if you believe it's possible. Now, if you don't believe it's possible, you have work to do, right? Because anything is possible. My coach tells us that, and she 100% believes that we can do anything, and she believes in us. And I know she does. Like I can feel that energy from her. And I feel that way about all of my clients. But do I feel that way about myself? Right? Like I know my coach believes that about herself because she's accomplished all the things, right? And whenever she's working with her clients in like a group coaching and they're not achieving their goals, and she asks them, do you believe this is possible? And they say, yeah. She's like, no, you don't. She calls their crap. Why? Because they haven't moved the needle. They haven't even made any progress toward the goal because they don't believe it's possible. That's where I was. And I didn't catch my crap. I didn't stop and go get curious and really think through, why don't you want to write this down? Right? I didn't get specific about exactly what the goal would be and what the milestones would be and what it would start looking like and actually take action towards the accomplishment of the goal. Didn't do all of the work, right? So this is the work. If you want to have goals and you want to achieve things in your life, this is the work. So why is it important? So the first thing is it expands your thinking. Because if you just set a goal to either do something like I'm going to exercise 3 times a week, that's probably not a huge, it might be a huge challenge for you. But if you have like, I'm going to lose X amount of pounds, or I'm going to accomplish, this much body fat, or I'm going to accomplish like something very measurable and something that's like a massive change. And it can be personal, it can be in your business, it can be in your work environment with your employer. It can be anything. But when you set a big goal, your brain has to expand. Now, the first thing it's going to do is tell you that this isn't possible. That's what my brain told me, and I listened to it. So, catch the crap, right? When your brain feeds you that negativity, which it will, who do you think you are to set a goal like that? You've never accomplished anything like that before. Your brain is going to go on this rant. My brain does, my coach's brain does. She's $100 million per year earner, and her brain still does this. Our brains are programmed to do this. It's what they do. Provides the negative because it's designed to keep us safe. It's a survival mechanism. So it's going to give you all the negative to keep you safe, which means keep you small, keep you where you are, which is not the expansive place of the new goal that you're trying to set. So if you want to accomplish a big goal, you're going to have to expand your brain. And when your brain offers up all the negativity, you can say, thank you, brain, but also we're going to go after this. So help me. What do we need to do? Help me figure this out. We have this big challenge ahead of us. We need you to focus on this, not that. And your brain will listen. It will start coming up with ideas. It will start thinking outside of the box. It will start thinking bigger. Because if you don't direct your brain, it will pony up the negative and it'll spend all day finding evidence for the negative. That's what it does. But if you tell your brain, no, brain, we're on this path. We are going down this road with that goal at the end. So help me figure out what is the next things to do. What are some things we can do? How can we accomplish this? Start thinking. That's what we're going to focus on. Now your brain has something different, more positive, more constructive, more productive to work on, and it will help you. Not that it won't assault you with negativity ever again, because it will, and you'll have to do this work every day, but it's worth it. And when you know it's going to happen, you're ready. And so when it does, you recognize it, you catch it, and you redirect it, right? That's the work always with catching the negativity in our brain is the awareness of it. Being prepared for it is always, that's kind of like the precursor, right? When we're aware of it happening, but the precursor is we know it's going to happen. We're prepared for it. We're expecting it. We're not blindsided. We know that's what our brain does. And also we become aware and we redirect it. So it's going to expand your mind to figure out something that you've never done before. And that is an amazing thing. That is something that transforms us into someone that accomplishes new things, that thinks differently. And those are skills that you can use for a ton of different things in your life, right? Like this is going to change who you are, the way that you think, how, diligent you are, constructive you are, how out of the box you are. And it will just change how you do things in every area of your life. So that is such a huge benefit. And then the other reason is to practice believing in yourself, right? Because every time your brain assaults you with the negativity, you've got to practice believing in yourself. I set this goal. I believe it's possible. I believe I can accomplish it. Brain, get on board. We're doing this. I believe it's possible. Help me figure out what the steps are, right? But we have to practice that believing in ourselves because if we start believing the negative that the brain offers, we're going to start having doubt and skepticism and I didn't really think that was possible anyways. And your brain also not only offers the negativity, but the motivational triad is also to conserve energy. So if you don't change and do these things and expand, the alternative is you stay where you are, you stay in your level of comfort, even if it's uncomfortable, it's a common discomfort. You stay stuck. You stay where you are. You stay small or smaller than you could be. And that's what your brain wants. It doesn't want you to exert energy, to have to think harder, to have to think bigger, right? It doesn't want you to do any of that. So you have to practice believing in yourself over and over again. So that's part of the work. And it's daily. All of this stuff, when you set the goal, if you're going to accomplish something huge, you're going to take action or at least be thinking about actions every single day. And then the other beautiful thing about setting big goals is it takes you out of the one how. Because if you're like me, your brain likes to offer, we don't know how, right? And if you believe it, which is a believable statement, right? You don't know how because you've never done this before, but we're going to figure it out. And there's more than one how. So there isn't just one answer to the question. There isn't one thing to do that will get you there. There's probably lots of things. And you might find one thing that moves you like huge leaps. And then you might find one thing that just moves you a little bit. You might find one thing that makes you go backwards, right? But it expands the hows. We have to figure things out and try it, take massive action. And the way that we move that progress is we come up with ideas and we try it and it gives us a result, either one that we want or one that we don't want. And so that's how we learn. They're not failures to tell us, see, this is why this doesn't work. No, we're learning every failure, every fall down, every step back, everything that doesn't move the needle, we've learned from, okay, that doesn't work. How about this? So we start expanding the hows, we start expanding what we try, we start to figure out all the different hows and we try them and we see if we get a good result or a bad result, and then we try something different. If we get something that works, we do more of it, right? And that's the work. That's the hows. That's how we get from here to there. And I also found this other kind of secret of the how part, which I thought was very interesting. I got it from Alex Hormozzi's. He did a presentation on how to win at anything. And he said, when your brain offers that you don't know how, and it gives you all of that negative kind of package of thinking, he said that all of that negative thinking is, like what you're doing now, right? Not doing things, not thinking bigger, like all of the things. Like, so if you asked yourself, how could I fail at this goal? Your brain would probably be like, oh, good, this is what I do, right? I do this, great. I'm going to give you this whole list of things how not to get that goal. You invert every one of those. So if your goal is, to, anything in like the fitness or weight loss, like, eat whatever you want, don't exercise at all, don't be active, like all the things that would create a fail for that goal, turn them around, every single one of them. So if it's eat whatever you want, you always eat on protocol. If it's never work out, it's work out 3 times a week. And so you already have, your brain's going to already give you all the ways that you can fail at this goal, turn them all around. And I was like, that is genius, because we're using the part of our brain that is just automatic, that just comes up without us even trying, without, even asking it. But when you are, intentional about asking, how can I fail at this? It's going to be ready to give it to you. So turn them all around. Start with those as your hows. And just know that this work is constant. Even the high earners, even the high achievers, every time they set a goal, their brain, you don't ever you don't ever lose that part of the brain that is just always the survival piece. So just know that that's always going to be part of your life. It is today. So it's not like you're going to turn this part on. That part is already active right now. It's why you haven't set the goal. It's why you haven't tried anything new. And I think this is so interesting that we get into this part of our life where we just stop doing these things. We stop setting goals for ourselves. We stop believing that it's possible, right? And when you think back to our early, like either early teens or early adulthood, right? We graduated high school. We went to school with the intention of graduating, getting a degree and getting a job and getting married and having kids. Like, we went after all of these things that we wanted, and we didn't just sit and listen to our brain say, you can't do that, you're not smart enough. We just did the thing. We believed it was possible, and we took the actions and did the thing and accomplished the thing. And then at some point, we just let that part of our brain get louder, and we just listen to it. And whether it's we just get comfortable or we just get out of that mode of constant growth, because if you imagine, like, the early part of our human life is all learning. That's all we do. We got to learn how to walk. We got to learn how to do this. We got to learn how to talk and read and write. And we're learning, 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 learning. And then we get to a point in our life where we kind of plateau and we stop that personal growth. And then we stop setting goals. We stop believing it's possible. We stop believing in ourselves. And this is the time to set a goal and break out of all of that restriction and be diligent about it. So I'm going to set my goal and I'm going to do these things. And I'm going to get behind it. I'm going to believe it's possible because I want that energy with me. I want that belief in myself. And I want to practice that every day. And I want to feel into my goals that it's possible. I want to imagine them accomplished. These are all the secrets to making sure that the thing is that when we embrace those feelings of that's a done goal, that's an accomplished goal, that it's possible, it's believable, when we engage in that type of thinking, we show up. We take action. We do the things. We start thinking, what can I do today? What can I do? And we start connecting with the completion of the goal, and we show up in a totally different way. Because you imagine, if you don't believe it's possible, how much effort are you actually going to give? How hard are you going to try to do something, figure out something to do today to try to move the needle, right? I mean, it's just what we do. And so we just have to catch the crap like that and just put a stop to it and set a goal and be intentional every day. That's the work. So I wish you the best of luck. Of course, if you have any questions on any of this, or you start this work and you get stuck and you need someone to help kind of catch your crap, reach out to me because I've had these goals for a long time and I haven't had anyone to catch my crap. I mean, I'm in group coaching programs, but I don't get the one-on-one and I get a lot of like education, but I don't get one-on-one coaching. So I didn't have anyone to catch my crap and say, "How long have you had this goal and what have you done with it?" I mean, that's what I needed someone to say to me is what have you actually done? And for her to say, for my coach to say, like I've seen her coach and say to numerous clients, do you believe it's possible? No. How do I know that? Because you haven't done the things. I needed someone to say that to me. And I finally figured that out and said it to myself. So here we go. We're lighting the fire, we're setting the goal, being intentional, and doing all of the work. This is it. Let me know how it goes. If you need help, I would love to visit with you about this, and I will be checking back in so you know how I'm doing with mine. With that, I will see you next week on the next Tuesday Talks with Twyla. Have a great week.